White Sox fans, welcome to Believe in White Sox here on a Friday afternoon, and we're going to talk about some of the biggest news in modern White Sox history that hit yesterday about an hour before first pitch against the Tigers. I was actually out at Rate Field yesterday watching the White Sox beat the Tigers 3-2 in extra innings. I was there on Tuesday night as well, and will probably be going on Sunday. So, make sure that you hit subscribe on both the YouTube page and the podcast platforms. White Sox fans have been clamoring for Jerry Reinsdorf to sell the team for a long time. And you have now finally, as the news broke yesterday, reached an ownership compromise. And meet your new owner, who a lot of White Sox fans figured was going to eventually become the majority owner, Justin Ishbia, the brother of Matt Ishbia, the primary owner of the Phoenix Suns. The Ishbias are some of the richest people in American sports, and whatever you want to say about them, they're at least going to infuse capital into the White Sox. So, from the White Sox press release, Ishbia is going to make capital infusions into the White Sox in 2025 and 2026 that is going to be used to pay down existing debt and support ongoing team operations. Reinsdorf will have the option to, starting in 2029, sell controlling interest or his stake in the team to Ishbia outright. If that doesn't happen by the end of the 2033 season, Ishbia will take primary control of the team starting in 2034, and then there will be the option for the limited partners to sell to Justin Ishbia in 2034. So basically, Reinsdorf is going to keep control of the team for at least 5 years. He's 89 years old, but he's going to keep control of the team for at least 5 years. And should he get to a point to where he wants to sell off his remaining interest, should, God forbid, he still be alive at age 94 in 2029, then he has the option to do so. This is basically Reinsdorf admitting that they needed capital. And this is effectively his compromise solution for being able to keep his precious baseball team, which Jerry Reinsdorf loves baseball. You cannot deny that. He owns the White Sox because he was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan growing up and still admires the Brooklyn Dodgers of the 1940s. But Jerry Reinsdorf is somebody that he just doesn't have the capital to operate a modern Major League Baseball team. And I think that whatever you think about the Ishbia family, they're going to spend money. And I think that based on maybe some payroll decisions that come in the next couple of years, you will see the impact of what Justin Ishbia is going to do. But this is still a way for Jerry Reinsdorf to have his fingerprints on it and be the day-to-day chairman. But we're going to start to see more of Justin Ishbia behind the scenes and hopefully what his financial impact can do for the future of this team. I think the timing of this, though, was very interesting. And I say interesting because of one specific factor. And we didn't cover this, we didn't do an episode when this happened because I'm skeptical. I grew up in the Bay Area. For the entirety of my lifetime, I have seen 4 different, including their current iteration in Las Vegas, I've seen 4 different Oakland A's stadiums, future stadiums that have never happened. People will sometimes be seen walking around A's games wearing Cisco Field shirts. Cisco Field was the signed-on primary sponsor of an A's stadium in Fremont, California, which is a little bit south of Oakland, that never happened. That stadium was supposed to open in 2011. So I'm always skeptical about new stadium plans ever happening. We're seeing this with the Chicago Bears at this point in terms of, are they going to finance a new stadium on the lakefront? Are they going to use the land in Arlington Heights and actually build out there? We don't actually have any idea what the Chicago Bears are going to do for the future of their ballpark. And the White Sox, it seemingly, want to get a new ballpark. Not that they need one. I love where the White Sox currently play, but there are, in the modern Major League Baseball economic environments, certain requirements that ballparks that are built recently need to have. And the fact of the matter is, and I hate that this is the case. I truly hate that this is the case because it shouldn't be the case. It's a real estate operation. It's an opportunity to build a park, build housing, build shopping, build bars, build everything that drives the economic engine. It's not just a baseball team. It's not just a park. It's basically, you've seen it with the Atlanta Braves in what they did at Truist Park, building in the suburbs and creating Braves Town in that sense. So I think that there are limitations to what a team can do in Bridgeport. And that's why the White Sox were so dead set on developing in this area the 78 and the South Loop, which is amazing considering how close it is to downtown. The fact that such a big plot of land is undeveloped, and we saw all of the renderings that came out and the water taxi and how cool a land could be. But the fact of the matter is that teams in cities like Chicago, in states like Illinois, I saw it in California. If you want to get something built, you have to have the capital to privately finance it. State governments and city governments are not going to subsidize professional sports owners. And there are certain people that have enough money to privately finance ballparks. I'll go back to the Bay Area as an example. The Giants were able to privately finance Oracle Park. They didn't take money from the city of San Francisco for that. The 49ers, despite how crappy of a stadium it is, were able to privately finance Levi's Stadium. The Golden State Warriors, based on all the success that they had in the early parts of their dynasty, were able to build in a high-class area on the water in San Francisco a privately financed arena, the Chase Center. In a state like California, you cannot build something, realistically speaking, it is bad optics in a state with big cities to build something with government money. Certain owners have the capital to build without government money. Certain owners need that. And that's why the A's effectively and the Raiders went to Las Vegas, because they got the state of Nevada to build them Allegiant Stadium. And it has turned out for Mark Davis, who in all shapes and sizes is not exactly the most adept owner, but that stadium is making money hand over fist. I say all this preface to say that the Chicago Fire announced that they are going to privately finance their own stadium in the 78. Their owner has the money to privately finance a new soccer-only stadium in that area. And there's enough room to build two stadiums. We see it in certain areas like Seattle. You've got T-Mobile Park and you've got Quest Field or whatever the Seahawks call their place right next to each other. There's enough land to build two stadiums. And I think that this may have been developing for a while, but I think that Jerry Reinsdorf finally had his come to Jesus moment, or come to whatever God you worship or believe in. It doesn't matter. That he was never going to get the future of the White Sox built on his family and his family's capital alone. And it is because of this that he realized that he needed the Ishbia's money. The Ishbias want to own a Major League Baseball team. Their efforts to buy the Twins did not succeed. They want to own a team. This is the easiest avenue for them to be able to own a team and have control of the team, and then eventually be able to own the team as majority partners. So I think that what the Fire ended up doing was, pun intended, lighting a fire under the ass of Jerry Reinsdorf and the White Sox partners to, if we're going to be able to build or have a new stadium, this is what we are going to have to do. Like, we are going to have somebody else come in that is going to put the capital in for us to finance a stadium and create the vision that we eventually want. And who knows whether or not, if the White Sox have been sold now, then, or whatever, where they would develop, where they would move the team, how all of this would shake out. But in reality, we have to figure out, this is from the White Sox perspective, they have to figure out what is the quickest path to our future. And that comes with transition of ownership. That's why this deal was done now. And the 78 is going to be the perfect spot for them to build a new stadium. They want to jump on it now while the Fire's plans are developing. It is a long transition process. I don't think it matters who actually owns the team, as long as there is an opportunity to infuse capital now that is going to expand this payroll and put the type of investments into the baseball team that are going to make this a competitive team. Andrew Benintendi is the most expensive free agent contract the White Sox have ever signed at $75 million total. That doesn't work in modern baseball. Doesn't work one iota. This is Reinsdorf admitting that the White Sox don't have the money to compete. He can't spend the money to compete. And this is his lifeline to still own the team, but actually put the resources in that are going to bring it back to respectability before he dies. And for the Ishbias, Justin mainly, with support from brother Matt and father Jeff, a chance to own an MLB team. And while it is not the most direct process to be majority owners in an MLB team, it is a guaranteed way for the family to eventually own a Major League Baseball team. And I think that we're going to see how the Phoenix Suns operate over the course of the next couple of years. Is the investment in the capital going to be able to bring the success that Suns fans want? Who knows? But all I can say is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the future of the White Sox and their ownership. And I think the fans are elated, even if this is not an immediate solution, but is one that's coming down the road. So a couple of other interesting news and notes, and I think the big player news that came out is that Kyle Teel is coming to the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox, it was rumored last night that he was going to get called up today, and the move was made official. He is up. Corey Lee is back down, which I think is interesting in that the White Sox have a plethora of catchers. And I don't necessarily know whether or not this is the right move if he's not going to get at bats every day. I would have preferred the White Sox to have kept 3 catchers on the roster and been able to play Kyle Teel in other spots. There may be opportunities where Kyle Teel gets starts at first base when Edgar Quero is catching. I still think that based on the way that this team is playing right now and how they're pitching, that Edgar Quero should still be the everyday catcher and get the majority of the at-bats, because I don't think it does anybody any good to have these guys up here and not have them be in the lineup every day. So you really can only have one primary catcher, but you've got to be able to get both bats in the lineup. So I think that Kyle Teel is going to end up playing in a lot of spots besides catcher, whereas Edgar Quero, whenever he's playing, he's going to be the catcher. So maybe with Tim Elko as your first baseman, maybe there starts to be more of a platoon. Maybe Teel ends up DHing. I'll be curious to see, and this episode will get published probably as the White Sox create their lineup or before they create their lineup. I'll be curious to see what the lineup construction is for the next couple of days and whether or not Teel and Quero are in the lineup at the same time. But I think that it kind of gives us a view into what the White Sox think of the future of Corey Lee. And the future of Corey Lee is that he's not a franchise guy. And it's not that they didn't, and maybe they didn't give him enough opportunities to be that, but I just think that based on the acquisitions and based on how guys have developed, that the better two players at this point are Kyle Teel and Edgar Quero. And Kyle Teel has had a phenomenal minor league season, as I get his numbers up here right now. With AAA Charlotte, he has hit 295 with an on base of 394, 8 homers, and 30 runs driven in over the course of 50 games. He's got an OPS of 886, and strikeouts are a little bit high. He's got 54 in 183 at bats, but look, that's what you're going to get with a power bat at certain points in time. But I think that it's good to see him now. And I love the fact that you could potentially have a lineup. And I'm still convinced that Tim Elko could be this team's first baseman in the future. You're going to have a lineup at one point in time that is going to have Chase Meidroth, Edgar Quero, Kyle Teel, and Tim Elko in it at the same time, and Miguel Vargas. Those are 5 guys that could be with this team for a long time and be a part of this team's next competitive life cycle. And you're going to get to see them now and see them develop together now. The question becomes is when does the next outfielder become part of this mix? That's to be determined. And the White Sox also have a shortstop issue. Maybe Lenyn Sosa, they feel comfortable with him as the everyday second baseman, and Chase Meidroth ends up becoming the everyday shortstop. But then, if they're not sold on what their first base situation is going to be, does that mean that Lenyn Sosa becomes this team's everyday first baseman? I think there's a lot of moving parts still in the infield. All I know is I don't want to see Vinny Capra ever again. No offense to Vinny Capra. I'm sure he's a nice guy. He's got a good family, whatever. Vinny Capra is not a Major League Baseball player. And Josh Rojas should be traded off this team before July 31st. There's no reason for him to be on this team either. And I think that where you start to complete the circle here is finding outfielders that are going to be a part of your next competitive life cycle, which is why I'm curious if Kyle Teel can play the outfield. I don't see why he can't be this team's everyday left fielder. But I guess we did see the detriments of that to the White Sox bringing up a career first baseman in Andrew Vaughn at the collegiate and the minor league level, and then having him play in left field on opening day in 2021 just to get his bat on the team. Maybe that's not the right way to go about things. Probably isn't the right way to go about things. But the White Sox have to do something in order to get all of these bats in the lineup. But they also need to find more secure bats for the team that they hope to put on the field in the future. And then figure out what of your current rotation is going to be here for the long term. And I think at least 2 guys, Shane Smith and Davis Martin. Now, Jonathan Cannon going on the IL certainly doesn't help things. But while Cannon has pitched well at times, there's just an inconsistency factor with him. And to me, that I think spells trouble when you've got 2 lefties in Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz. And don't forget a right-hander in Grant Taylor that all could become future pieces of a potentially incredible White Sox rotation. It's going to take time. But we're seeing now with Kyle Teel up, we're seeing that this team has the potential, especially now with the ownership capital being infused in, there's an opportunity for this team to accelerate their competitive life cycle. Maybe that means signing some real free agents in the offseason or making a real big trade that brings in a big fish that you can extend. That is to be seen. But what we do know is that more of the future is here than we first thought was going to get here at this point in the year. It's June 6th, and already you have 2 pieces of the Garrett Crochet trade on the Major League roster. You've got Edgar Quero here. and you've got the guy that you've been more learning that could be a potential first baseman in the future. And the last thing that I'm really curious about moving forward is what the future of Luis Robert Jr. is going to be. So there is a batting cage mishap that happened with Luis Robert Jr., and he hasn't been in the lineup for quite some time. And I don't know how the White Sox feel about Luis Robert Jr. at this point, other than the fact that it seems like there's more of an urgency to cycle him out than it is to continue to play him. And at this point, his trade value is basically zero. He's hitting 177 over the course of 192 at-bats. This is, and granted, he's stealing bases, but this is on pace to be the worst year that he's ever had. And now the fact that he hasn't played since the series opener against the Tigers. I mean, this is the first time in a healthy form of Luis Robert Jr. that he hasn't played for 3 straight games. Now, he had some absences in the Mets series, but he did have a little bit of injury issues. I can't remember what they were off the top of my head, but I'll be curious to see if he's in the lineup tonight. And whether the White Sox just throw up their hands and say, we'll get whatever we can for him. But he needs to have the fire lit under him that if he wants to have his club option picked up and be able to extend and have a longer contract, like he's only 27 years old. He still has a significant big league future, but he has to take that. He has to be the guy that we saw when he first burst on the scene in 2020 and 2021 for that matter, and be able to stay healthy. Or the guy in 2023 that hit 38 homers. But right now, he's got no trade value. And if he's not playing, then that trade value drops even more. I want to see Luis Robert play, but I want to see him play with passion and with a notion in the back of his mind that he has to continue to play well if he's going to have a big league future. Simple as that. And with that, that's it. That's all. Looks like I am going down to Rate Field tonight to watch the White Sox and the Kansas City Royals. I'll also be there on Sunday. Who is pitching tonight? I actually have no idea who's pitching tonight. This is why we have cell phones, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you watching on the YouTube, this is certainly going to be a very interesting, watching me be a millennial and look at my phone while this is going on. It's going to be Davis Martin against Seth Lugo tonight. So 2 guys with sub 3.7 ERAs. Should be a good ball game. Hope that you tune in now that CHSN is on Comcast, but is now apparently off the over-the-air signals. But knowing my cable package, I won't get it anyway, and it is what it is. Not going to lose sleep over it. That's why God invented radios. Thanks, everybody. This has been Believe in White Sox on the Believe Podcast Network.